This is the Unstuck movement. This platform features true testimonials of breakthrough to give you examples in your life that it's possible for you to break the chains that are holding you back. Today, I have the incredible Ondra Němčík with us on the podcast. And I'd love to jump right in, Ondra, with a powerful question right off the bat, because I love to create an environment that creates breakthrough, right? And for you, one of the biggest things that you found breakthrough in your life was social anxiety and dealing with depression. And what I find very fascinating about your journey, the thing that inspired you to take control of your life and to overcome this social anxiety, to have you have a breakthrough in your depression, was not taking medications. It was not going to therapy. You did not follow the traditional methods for this breakthrough. How did this happen for you in your life?
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here. Let's jump right into it. I love the question. For me, it was like the first inspiration to get started. It was the pain, right? It like really got so painful and so unbearable that like I completely hated myself, and I did consider taking my own life a couple times, and I was close to jumping in front of a train a couple times as well. I think in this case I was maybe a little bit of a coward because I was too scared to do it, thankfully. And I think it was probably one day of being more bullied in school than other days. And I just got back and was like, I just can't take it anymore. I have to change something, or something has to change, or I'm not going to end up super well. And I knew that I didn't really want to die, but I just knew that I didn't want to live that way anymore. And I just went on Google and I Googled how to be happy. And then I Googled how to be confident. And because I was struggling with social anxiety, was a big part of my depression. And so that's how I got introduced into this. And the biggest reason I would say I went this way and I didn't go into therapy is because I'm from the Czech Republic, from a small town on the east. So it's still the mindset of mental health issues don't exist. Just get over it. You don't need a doctor. You don't need any of this. And so my family wasn't really a big fan of this. Also, I think a part of it was probably we couldn't really afford it at the time. So I just had to find my own way.
Amazing, man. I love it because the breakthroughs, and we're going to talk about this in this episode, but the breakthroughs that you've found and the lifestyle that you've embraced since then has flipped yourself on your head, right? You're a completely different person than you used to be. And you're actually setting a standard now for how other people can live and break free from social anxiety, from depression, be able to travel the world, and all the amazing things that you're doing. So as we get into that, I just want to set this up, right? This platform, if you're watching or listening right now, is for you to have a real example in your life that it's possible for you to get through the things you're going through. Perseverance, faith, strength, dedication to breaking that pain. Like you said, painful moments, the pain in our lives cause movement. That can be a movement to worse things, like to, suicide and things of that nature, or to better things, to finding a solution, to finding a way to live life differently. This platform is brought to you by the Connected Leaders Academy. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. So Ondra Němčík, which I know I'm not saying your name perfect, but I'm getting close, is a mindset coach and international speaker who overcame depression and social anxiety without therapy or medication. He now helps individuals find their purpose and start impact-driven businesses. As you went online, at what age was this that you went online and you searched how to be happy? How old were you?
I was about 13 years old.
Okay. So you're 13 years old, you're getting bullied at school, you go online, you search how to be happy, and you start to find some answers from the internet. How did you start to implement these things into your life? I think this is super important, man, because if somebody, feels like they're at the end of the rope and they really want to make a change and they're desperate and they do what you did, they've got to take action. How did you take action on the things that you found?
You absolutely have to take action. I want to pre-frame this a little bit and say, very first thing that has to happen is you have to take some level of responsibility and accept that you can do something about it. Like before, right? And that kind of pre-framed even why I went out and I Googled for something and I searched for something. Because at first I was thinking, there's nothing I can do. It's not my fault. It's the bully's fault. It's my parents' fault. It's my family. It's the school, right? Nobody's helping me. I'm getting bullied. I can do, and I cannot do anything. But then, because the pain built up so much, I was like, okay, I have to do something about this, right? So I took some level of responsibility, which allowed me to be like, okay, what can I do? And I started asking myself, what can I do? Right? So instead of blaming the outside world, first accept that you can do something about it, because you always can do something, right? There's a lot of things that you cannot control, but there's a lot of things that you can control. So first, that's a big piece. That's a big acceptance part, that you can do something.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second, for what happened after I made this search, I don't really remember specifically everything that I obviously read. One of the things that I read for a step of how to be happy was be confident. And then so that was immediate strike. Like, I'm not confident, right? I have social anxiety. So of course, I have to do something about that. And for some reason, again, I don't remember specifically what I read or what I watched, but I linked and I made an association that if I want to have confidence, social confidence, and like mental strength, I need to have more physical strength. And I was skinny, I was weak, I was small. So I had no physical strength. So I linked up that if I want to have more social and mental strength, I need to start with physical strength. So I decided that I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. every day before school and go for a run. Well, it started at 5:30 and then eventually I moved it to 5 a.m. But I literally started getting up at 5 a.m. before school to go for a run, to build my physical strength and mental strength as well. I mean, it takes a lot of mental strength to get up at 5 a.m. and go for a run. So that was the beginning piece.
It's really interesting because we hear things like, just be confident, right? It's really funny that you look up how to be happy and it says be confident. And it's like, okay, well, if I'm not happy, I'm probably not confident. Those two things, they go together. So finding that confidence, and I love what you just said, but that's so true, man. If you're walking into a situation and you don't feel physically in shape, you're going to be less confident. If you walk into a situation and you feel like maybe you just had a workout or you work out every single day, and so you feel that way, you just feel better about yourself. But another piece of that too, for me, which is also what you just said right here, it's so true. You forced yourself to get up to do something difficult in the morning that you didn't want to do. Being confident is sticking true to things that you should be doing. Actually do those things. So if it's like, I need to work out, actually doing it. I need to eat better, actually doing it. I need to stop, if it's drugs, taking drugs, actually doing it. Those things are going to give you the confidence to build you up to the place that you need to be to build that confidence. It's all about the integrity, right? If we are true to who we internally believe ourselves capable of being, like there's certain things that I think we all internally we know, I need to do this thing to be better. If you don't do that thing, you're not going to be confident because you're like incongruent with yourself. But if you do those things, you are, and you build that confidence over time. And something I was just going to say, and where's the book at? It's somewhere. The book is called QBQ, The Question Behind the Question. And that book is all about what you said, man. It's all about what can I do about it? What can I do to change my own life, right? What actions can I take? I love that so much because it's such a simple thing to do, to flip those questions on their head to like, how can I take control? So, all right, you start working out, you wake up at 5 o'clock every day, you're running, you're starting to build this repetition for yourself and this new habit into your life. What started the change as this process started happening?
Yeah, so it took, since then, I would say it took maybe about a year and a half or 2 years till I started seeing like outward results. I started feeling better. I started feeling different, but for it to manifest in the real outside world, it took a while. And so I was basically two main things that I changed before the Google search and after the Google search was I started actually working out and running. running was my main part. I did some push-ups and whatnot, but just I became a runner, right? And became a big part of my identity. And this became my confidence building habit, which is what I teach now. And it doesn't have to be running, right? It can be something physical or something difficult, something challenging that builds your confidence, a confidence building habit, right? So it started kind of internally working and making some changes. And the second thing that I was doing that I didn't mention yet, I started learning more and more, right? It wasn't just one Google search. It was one Google search, and then it was another one, and it was 10 videos and 20 videos. There was books and courses and everything that I could find. At the time, everything was free because I didn't have any money to invest. But every free resource that I could find about happiness, personal growth, confidence, social anxiety, practical psychology, I would learn it. So I became really obsessed about self-help material and personal growth material, and I started meditating and I'm trying to apply all of these different habits that I learned about, obviously very imperfectly and not super consistent. Even when we talk about the running, I think it's important to note for people to know that you don't really start by saying I'm going to run every single day for the rest of my life and then just run every single day for the rest of your life. Like, it took a while to build that habit, like I failed many times, but because I had the reason and like kind of the purpose behind it. It's like, I'm not doing this only so I can run. I'm doing this because I want to become confident. I'm doing this because I want to build a better life. I'm doing this because this is helping me my social anxiety. So I had a bigger purpose and why behind it to stuck with it. Even I failed a couple of times. I woke up, I remember many times when I woke up one day, I was just like, I haven't gone for a run for like 2 weeks. Okay, well, I guess tomorrow I have to start again, right? And start again and start again. So I think that's an important part. If you fail with a new habit, don't beat yourself up over it too much. Just get started again as soon as possible. And over time and consistency and persistence over a longer period of time, a couple of years, months, years, that's where you're going to start to seeing the bigger effects. So biggest change in the beginning was that I started feeling differently, right? That's really how I can describe it. It's an internal experience, like mental health, social anxiety. It's an inward experience. It's hard to describe. I just started feeling more confident, feeling more sure of myself. And then later on, how it started manifesting was that I started talking to people on social media. I downloaded these apps. Well, it wasn't really social media, I guess, back then. I didn't like Facebook. I didn't like Snapchat at the time. It was very popular and sharing stories and all this. I hated that stuff. I was like, I want to have my life private, or whatever. But I didn't want to talk to people. I wanted to practice conversations. I wanted to get to know people, right? So I downloaded these couple apps. And one of the apps it was basically one main feature on it. And there was this one button in the middle of the screen. And you just click the button, and this little paper airplane would fly around a globe like a couple times, maybe took a couple seconds, and it would match you with a person who's somewhere in the world, but also open the app and click the button basically at the same time. And it put you into a chat, right? And it told you, hey, this person, this is the name, and this person is from Egypt, or this person is from Brazil, or this person is from Vietnam. And I would just start chatting with people. And so first it was just internal confidence and started feeling better. And then it transitioned into practicing conversations and how do I ask questions? How do I lead the conversation on? Through chat in the very beginnings. I wasn't not even close capable of talking to somebody in real life, or even on a video call, or even on a voice message, or even calls. Like, I was super terrified of just making a phone call. It was basically unthinkable. But chat was an easy enough barrier to start with, So that's what I started. And then eventually I started leveling up, right? And I went from chat into just text chat. I went to voice messages, and I went from random strangers into more like people that I more knew, right? And I started doing maybe video messages, and then eventually I started doing phone calls, and then I started doing video calls, and going more and more, and started building relationships with these people, sometimes that I met or even in real life. And then eventually, again, this was a couple of years process, right? I'm selling it fast, but it took months and years to really build in. And so that was kind of the work that I was doing more privately, and with technology and stuff. And how it manifested, two ways how it really manifested in my real life, especially in school, was the first thing. I was actually able to stand up to my bullies. And one day, like, I will probably never forget this. He was like kind of like slapping me around, you know, and I just slapped him back. And when I slapped him, he was just like,
That's not supposed
he
to
was
happen.
like completely stunned. He was like, what just happened? Like, this has never happened before, right? And so he didn't know how to react. And basically since then, none of the bullies ever like picked on me or touched me again, because
Man,
they
I
were like,
love that.
oh, damn, like he's able to stand up to himself now. We better stay away, right?
Isn't it crazy? And I just want to touch on this, man, because this is so important, right? I'm not saying that your scenario is the same for everybody's scenario, but most of the time, like, bullies are in your life to give you an opportunity to stand up for yourself. If we look at life as opportunities and blessings, man, those bullies were there to push you to break through the doubt, the low self-esteem, the low self-worth you had in yourself, right? To prove that you weren't that person so you could be a better person. So I just wanted to touch on that, man, because that's huge, and that's what happens when you stand up to the fears in your life.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I like how you say it's an opportunity to stand up for yourself. And it's a good habit, and it's a good practice to have. But I want to stress a little bit of that. Like, I don't believe that if I didn't do the work before, right, the running, the learning, the conversations with other people, and the workouts, and doing all that, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be able to do that, to stand up, like just overcome that fear or have that courage just by myself. Naturally, I not even close. But because I was adopting all of these other habits, right, and I was doing the learning, then that's where more of the courage came from, and more of the confidence came from as well. And I was feeling stronger physically. I mean, at this point, I was, running and working out quite consistently for about a year and a half or 2 years. So again, I'm repeating the timeline here, right? Because it took years for me to develop this. Like, I started when I was 13, and I would say, like, by the time when I almost fully overcame my social anxiety and was able to speak to strangers and do public speaking and whatnot, I was like 19, 20, right? So it was 7 years of development. It wasn't like I Googled how to be happy, I started running, and then the next month I was standing up to my bully and talking to girls on the bus, which was the next part that I'm going to bring up. Like, that was one of the developmental pieces that I did as a challenge, to challenge myself and challenge my social anxiety in real life, right? I went out and said, I'm going to start talking to girls on the bus when I was on my way to school, which, was a whole kind of fun and not so fun challenge at sometimes. But that wasn't able to happen in a few months or in a few weeks after I just did a Google search or after I just went for a couple runs in the morning, right? It takes time, and you need to have patience. And of course, you can, by going to somebody who's been through the same journey and can help you be more consistent, or you can do that faster by learning certain techniques or certain strategies, like using your body language to be more courageous in the moment. That can help you shrink it down and make it faster. It doesn't have to be 6-7 years like it took me, but it still will not be 2 weeks or 2 months, right? So I think that's an important piece. And about talking to girls on the bus on my way to school, right? That was the way when big breakthrough, like if we're talking about testimonies of breakthroughs, that was a moment where I had a massive breakthrough. Since obviously slapping my bully back was a big breakthrough as well, I think this one had more weight, because I feel like that's something that I was even more afraid of, just doing something like this in public and on a bus where it's a closed environment. There's a lot of people in it, right? And everybody sees it. So my brain was going off like, she's going to reject you, you're going to embarrass yourself, everybody's going to laugh at you, this is so weird, nobody ever does this. But I had the idea, and I always saw the pretty girls, right? At this time I was like 14, 15, maybe 16. So, as a 16-year-old boy who has social anxiety, all I ever wanted to do was to be able to speak to girls, right?
Yeah.
Especially speak to attractive girls. And I think every guy can relate to this. right? And I just wasn't able to. So that's the challenge that I picked. And I was also thinking, if I can do this, like I'll be able to do basically anything, right? Like if I can do this, then I'll be able to do basically anything. And so
Wait, hold on. Before you dive into it, I want to know exactly what happened. We have 60 seconds. We got to jump into our sponsor real quick. I want to save the suspense of what happened in that conversation and the massive breakthrough that you had from that. We'll talk about that in 60 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
All right, so you're on the bus. You decide I'm going to talk to these pretty girls, and like your brain's fighting you the whole way on this thing. What happens?
Yeah. So I'll paint a picture of this was the second time I ever actually spoke to a girl, and I'll explain why I'm not talking about the first time. The first time was very weird and embarrassing, a lot of awkward moments, but they were kind of friendly and they kind of went with it. The second time I got rejected hard, and that was the thing that I was most afraid of. And I used the same strategy as the first time that I will explain, of like, if you want to do something like this, you're listening to this, you want to do something like this, you want to boost your confidence and your courage in the moment, this is what you can do, right? So picture this. I'm on the bus, I'm sitting on the seat, I'm by myself, and I see this girl enter the bus and on our buses, there's 2-seaters, right? So she's sitting right here, and there's an empty seat right next to her. So I'm sitting there immediately. I saw her, I see her, my brain starts going, I want to go talk to her. And then as I have the thought, it goes into like anxiety, shut down. There's no way. I'm a nerd. She's not going to want to talk to me. She's going to reject me. Everybody's going to laugh. I'm going to embarrass myself. As I have these thoughts, my body also goes into anxiety and shut down. So if you've struggled with anxiety or something like this, it's not just mental, it's physical as well. So my body goes like this, and I start shaking. Like my heart is beating super fast. I'm sitting like this, right? And I'm sitting there shaking, and I'm trying to think like, I want to go talk to her. If I'm in a state like this, basically no way. So what I've learned is the first step is to shift my body, right? If I'm like this, there's no way that I'm going to go up and talk to her. So first I have to take a deep breath, right? Put my shoulders back, maybe sit up a little bit more straight, take a deep breath a couple times, smile, put my shoulders back. Now I've created a little bit of a window. My biology, my neurochemistry, like testosterone goes up, cortisol goes down. They've done studies on this. If you change your body language, your biochemistry changes, you have more courage in the moment, right? And so now you create a little window where you can talk yourself into it a little bit more, right? So the thoughts that are saying, I'm a nerd, I'm gonna embarrass myself, she's gonna reject me, it's gonna be awful, it quiets down a little bit, and you can start convincing yourself, it's okay, you got this, you've practiced, you know what to say, right? Whatever it is. But the best strategy in this moment, where you create this opening, is just use the 5-second rule. You've probably heard about this from Mel Robbins, right? So I use the 5-second rule. Go from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stand up and just start walking. Mm-hmm. So I did this. I changed my posture. I did my countdown. I stood up and I started walking towards her. And I walk up to her and I just say, hi, is this free, right? Because there's an empty seat next to her. And she just looks up from her phone, kind of like looks at me a little bit, and just says, yeah, sure. So I sit down next to her, and guess what? Immediately back to my anxiety. So I sit down and I go back to this, right? And I start shaking again. And I'm looking at her and I'm shaking, and she's on her phone and she kind of sees me at the corner of her eye. Like, And so she must be thinking like, what is this guy on? What is he doing? You know?
Yeah.
And then finally I did my technique again, right? So I'm sitting there right next to her and I do like, oh, okay. And I put my shoulders back, I smiled, and I just reached out. I leaned over and reached out with my hand and just, hi, my name is Ondra, right? And she looked up from her phone and just looked me up and down like this and just went, no. And so now I'm sitting there, right? And I'm stunned. What's next? What do I do? So I stood up and I just said, sorry to bother you. I started to walk away to my original seat. As I started to walk away, that's when the breakthrough really happened. Because I just went into like bliss and joy, right? I was ecstatic. Like I've never experienced the feeling like that ever before. I was super ecstatic. And my brain at first, I couldn't understand it. I was like, I got rejected. The worst thing that I was most afraid of just happened. And I'm happy about it. Like I'm ecstatic, not just happy, but I'm ecstatic. I didn't see if anybody was laughing at me. I didn't see anybody. I basically blocked out everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt this immense joy. And that day I didn't walk off the bus. I didn't walk to school. I was literally skipping like, da, 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 like I was ecstatic completely, right? And even as I walked up, I got off the bus, the doors closed and she was sitting next to the window, right? And as the bus was leaving, I waved at her. I was like smiling. I was waving at her. She's like looking at me all confused. You know, I can see her in her expression. Doesn't make any sense, but I was ecstatic. I loved it. And I skipped all the way to school and I was still super happy. And my friends started coming in, right? My classmates. And they were like, what's wrong with you? Why are you so happy today? And I'm telling him this story. I got rejected by this girl on the bus. Oh my God, it was so hilarious. And they're like you've lost it. You know, you should go get treated or something. Like you're absolutely nuts. You shouldn't be this happy about getting rejected. You shouldn't be this happy because it's the beginning of the school day. We have tests coming up and whatnot. And I didn't care about any of it. I was just ecstatic, right? And then obviously the feeling kind of dissipates. And so if we talk about breakthrough, I wanna kind of reflect on this. There's two main things that happened in this story, besides the actual technique, because besides the strategy of how I did it. I learned that first, overcoming my fear is what's gonna give me this ecstatic feeling. Like doing the thing that's most uncomfortable is gonna make me is gonna just show me what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And the fear itself was much worse than the thing itself, right? The fear of the rejection was so much worse than the rejection itself. And that's really that was a breakthrough that it clicked for me. I experienced it in that moment.
Yeah.
And another thing was, if you recall what I said, my classmates asked, what's wrong with you? Why are you so happy? So in order to be really happy and ecstatically happy, there's something got to be wrong with you, right? In our society, something's wrong with you if you are really happy. If you feel fully alive, it means that something's wrong with you to other people. So in that day, the breakthroughs and the decisions that I made based on the breakthroughs is, first, I'm going to always go into my discomfort. I'm going to always push to overcome my fears, no matter how hard it is. Because as well, kind of say this, it took me probably weeks, if not months, since the decision of I'm going to start introducing myself to girls on the bus until I was actually able to do it, right? The weeks before that, guess what? I would be sitting there like this, see the girl, and keep shaking, and then bing, my bus stop is off. I have to go to school, right? I missed out on so many opportunities for weeks, right? And so since then, I was like, no matter how difficult it is, I'm going to do my best. No matter how long it takes me, I'm going to always strive to overcome my fears and seek discomfort. Go on, try to be on the other side of the discomfort. And second, I want to be fully alive. I want to feel this ecstatic, I want to feel this happiness and this joy, this excitement for life. And if that means that I have to be weird or crazy or not normal, I'm happy to do that.
I love it, man, because I mean, these are some things that a lot of people never figure out. Like we never figured this stuff out, right? And the fact that you went in, you dove into this and not like you said. And that's really, it's really, really good also that you keep going back to the point that it doesn't happen right away. And there's months of like thinking about doing it, almost doing it, not doing it. And just the turmoil that you deal with whenever that happens, right? When you know there's something that you need to do because you know you need to advance yourself personally in life, and you continuously don't do that thing, it like eats, I don't know about you, how you felt during these times, but it eats me alive. Like I can't stop thinking about it. I'm like, come on, man, you can do this. And like you just said, as you do the things that are so difficult, and this is for somebody who might be 13, somebody who might be 30, somebody who might be 80, right? As you continue to do these things, you remind yourself it's not as bad as I think it's going to be. It's never, ever anywhere near as bad as I think it's going to be. Oftentimes, it's actually pretty amazing when you step into these situations and you actually do the stuff that you know you need to do. I'm curious, like, what did your family notice changing in you? What did they say about the changes? Because the people that are closest to you sometimes will notice this stuff, or sometimes they'll be totally clueless that you're changing. And what was that like for you as you began to grow and change?
Yeah, I would say my family was more on the side of being completely clueless. Because I think it was also a part of it was because they dismissed it altogether, right? They were like, mental health issues don't exist, get over it, don't be a little,
Yeah.
And that was kind of their attitude. So I think they didn't care. So maybe they just saw it as like, oh, he got over it, like, yeah, he did what we told him to do. But all of the things that went into it, they didn't fully see. I do remember one moment though, when my mom caught me waking up at 5 a.m. before school to go for my run. And I've been probably doing this for months at the time. Usually my mom would already be gone. She woke up at 4 a.m. to go for work because the shifts, she was working at a factory. So her shift started at like 5 a.m. or something. So she was already at work usually. But this day she didn't go to work. And so I woke up and I was like putting on my shoes, and then she caught me and she's like, what are you doing? Where are you going? Right? And I'm still 13 at the time. And I'm like, well, I've been going for a run. And she's like, are you nuts? Are you crazy? What the hell are you doing? Go to sleep. I'm like, no, I got to go for my run. Right. And so that's when she kind of was like, she didn't understand it. Right. And she didn't understand why I was doing it. And she didn't even try. She just tried to convince me that I'm crazy and that I shouldn't be doing it, that it's not worth it, that I just get more sleep to go to and then go to school. Whereas I was like, I don't care about the sleep. I need to get my run because that's what's building my confidence. That's what's building my future. And so I didn't listen to her, thankfully. And I just kept going for the runs. And I didn't tell anybody really. In the first couple of years, I didn't really tell anybody. And then afterwards, after I've been doing it for a while, I started speaking up about it. And I got this reaction a lot, actually, that you're crazy. You're waking up at 5 a.m. to go for a run before school. Like, you're crazy. Like, why would you do that, right? And people didn't really get it. And for me, it just made total sense at the time. It was like, this is saving my life, like quite literally.
Yeah, man, it's interesting, isn't it, in society? Like, because you said, you being extra happy was weird. You going and exercising in the morning is weird. It's just a reminder that most of society, like well over 90%, don't do these things. They don't act these ways. They don't do these things. These are not normal things for most people to do. So it looks abnormal, but that's why most people are stuck, miserable, and really maybe not even miserable, but they've just kind of given up on like life possibly being better than it can be. They've kind of given up on them being the best version of themselves, right? So as we come to the back end of this episode, I really want to ask about the traveling, okay? Because now you travel all over the world. Right now you're in Vietnam. I met you in Maryland, right? In the United States. So you travel like crazy. How old are you now?
I'm 24.
24. Okay. So you've been out of school for 6 years. And you've been traveling for that long. How did this part come into play? Because this sounds like the biggest game changer that you've done in the past few years.
Yeah. so that was when my family actually started noticing the big changes, right? That's where when I started talking about, I'm going to start my business, I'm going to help people with social anxiety just like I overcame it myself, I'm going to become a coach, I'm going to do this, I'm going to travel the world, I'm going to, get a van and travel around in a van later on. Not there yet, that's kind of the next, that's going to be the next stage. But that's when they started thinking, seeing that something changed, because up until that point, this is when I was around 19, right? So about 5 years ago. Up until that point, I was in a programming career, right, in the software engineering, and I was pretty good at it. I was graduating high school basically at the top of my class and all of this, so I was pretty much on a track to have a decent software engineering career. Like locally, I had an internship going on in a local firm, and things were happening. And then I just kind of shifted gears and I started seeing, people traveling the world, and I got interested in more into the world of entrepreneurship, because there was natural progression from all of the years of personal development. I was like, I want to do more, and then I wanted to give back, right? Like that was the big goal of like, I want to help people with social anxiety the way I overcame it. Because as I was a part of these groups, I saw so many people continuously struggling and even going to therapy and using medications and all this, and it just didn't work out for them, right? And they were still stuck. So I'm like, I did it. I know the insights. I know the back end. I know how it feels. I can support. I can guide. I can help out.
Mm-hmm.
And I did very much love the idea of being able to travel the world and exploring different cultures. And that kind of tied back into, I mentioned earlier that I downloaded this app where I was connecting with people from all over the world, right? And talking to people from Brazil and Egypt and Mexico and Vietnam and Philippines. And so I was already super interested in different perspectives and different cultures and all of this. So just the thought of being able to go there and experience it myself and travel the world slowly and make money online, have my freedom, it totally caught my attention. So I did start my business and I went all in. So I decided to drop out of the university of my software engineering career, dropped school and just started working on the business. And then I had to get a local job at like a package delivery company loading trucks, because my parents requested me, oh, if you drop out of school, well, you're gonna have to become an adult, you have to pay for your own food. I had to pay rent for the room that I was staying in my house, in our family house. So I had to start working and doing my business on the side, and it took about 2 years doing, building my brand and building more confidence on video and being able and coaching few people for free and delivering the results and just sharing my story, sharing my journey, and giving people all I could, just trying to help out as much as I could.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me about 2 years, almost 2.5 years before I was able to quit my job and start doing it full time. And so now at this point, it's been a little over 2 years since in April 2022 was when I quit my last full-time local job and I started doing this full-time. And since then, I've been to about 17, 18 countries. I've been to about 24 countries total at this point. And not lived in a lot of them, but in a bunch of them I lived longer than a month, because that's kind of how we do it. And yeah, so the experience of that has definitely brought more growth and again, more confidence, more understanding of the world and different perspectives, and being able to learn about Buddhism from a monk in Thailand, and being able to learn more about the Mexican culture in Mexico, and being able to go to the US and to the conference where we met, and to the events, and network with all kinds of amazing people from all over the world and just keep learning. I'm a big fan of the idea of continuous never-ending improvement and continuous never-ending learning.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it's definitely brought a lot more, let's say, like experiential wisdom, and then also just amazing experiences. It's amazing. It's an amazing life. to be a couple months in Vietnam, and then be a couple months in Thailand, and then be a couple months in Cambodia, then be a couple months in the US, and then be a couple months in Mexico, and then be a couple months in Europe again. You get to really, experience a lot of the world.
Yeah, man, living the traveling nomad lifestyle. What's the biggest thing on all these countries you've been to and all the people that you've met? What is the most interesting thing you've learned about people through all of this, including yourself?
We have a lot more in common than it might seem. While we have a lot of differences, but we have a lot in common as humans. And I think the biggest thing I've learned is, especially when it comes to people and connecting with people, is it's always about what we focus on. Right? So if you're connecting with somebody, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what culture or country, you always want to start with what you have in common, and learning it and approaching it with curiosity, right? So a lot of the times, is at least I'll say this as well. Very sadly, my country and my culture, especially in my small town, tends to be very racist, specifically towards Muslim people, right? And like illegal immigrants going to Europe and escaping and all of this. Even if you watch the news, it's not really the fault of the people, but if you watch the news, like, you would see, all like, oh, this Muslim guy raped our women, this guy, robbed our store, and that's all you would see. So of course you develop negative feelings. So what I've learned is, like, everybody's actually human, right? And we're judging them based on the different belief or different way they grew up. But what if we focus on what we have in common first, and then be curious about the differences, right? And be curious how we can learn. So it was like a mindset shift, or like a perspective shift, that really happened. And it happened kind of slowly, ever since I started talking to people online through these chats, right? And like seeing on the news of, like, Muslim people are evil, and then talking to somebody who's Muslim and actually learning about their perspective and being like, wow, like, this person is so kind and absolutely loving and amazing. I love talking to this person. I think we can be absolutely amazing friends. It opened up my mind.
I love it. It's so true. It is like, if I've always said to myself, if I have a problem with somebody, but I don't actually know that person, I need to spend some time with them, because then I won't have a problem with them anymore. I mean, possibly that person, I might still have a problem. I might learn that they're worse than I thought, but a lot of the times you're going to learn that this person's better than you thought. And we all, like you said, on a foundational level, we all have so much in common. We all want the same things. And connection is a beautiful thing, man. Like you said, in those chat rooms, making those connections is why I love doing this podcast. I love just connecting with people that are on, they have a lifelong learning mindset, that have a growth mindset. And then I love taking this experience, right? Talking to you, talking to people I have on this show. Everybody on this show has had amazing breakthroughs. So when I go and I talk to somebody who doesn't know this world, right? Because you can sometimes forget that, like, there's other parts of society besides the one that you're in, like the echo chamber you put yourself in, right? So when I go talk to somebody who doesn't think how I think, I can speak directly into their life because of what I've experienced from other people. I have an uncle, just as an example, I have an uncle who, he's been a hermit for a long time. His son died many years ago. And he's just never really moved from that place in his life. I ran into him. I went to his house actually last week. I sat down and I talked to him for like a half an hour, and we had the best conversation. I told him I loved him and gave him a hug and some stuff I think that he hasn't heard in a long time. And I could see the difference in me in that situation, because I'm so much different than I was, say, 10, 20, 30 years ago, right? And so it's amazing. It's amazing as you can go into the world with the things you've learned and how much impact you can have, which I know is what you're doing also. That's how you're impacting the world, by making your mess your message. You went through the mess, you got through the stuff of the social anxiety, the depression. Now you can make it a message that you serve other people with. So if people want to get a hold of you, obviously your Instagram, Robo Humanist. First of all, what does Robo Humanist mean? And how can people reach out to you and get in contact with you?
Absolutely awesome. Thanks for asking. Yeah, go to my Instagram. You can send me a DM directly. I'm gonna be there to reply as soon as I can. Robo-humanist is kind of my nickname, kind of my pseudonym that I want to start using. It's something that I want to put out there into the world. It's also associated to a bigger philosophy and a bigger like perspective that I'm working on. I'm writing a book. And the main idea here is creating a healthy relationship between humanity and technology. In other words, how can we stay in touch with our humanity while technology gets bigger and more intrusive and persuasive? So how can we still stay in touch with our humanity and utilize it for our personal growth and for deeper connections, rather than being more isolated, rather than being, glued to our screens like this, and practicing, like exercising our thumb only like this with the scroll motion, instead of being out there in the real world.
Yeah, man. Learning how to use technology and not letting it use you. And that's what we all
Exactly.
need, is to use it to our advantage and not let it use us. Amazing conversation, Ondra. Thank you so much for coming on here, for doing what you do. Anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
Thank you for having me. What I want to leave you with is a quote that I really like is, alone you are strong, but together we're unstoppable. So no matter what you're dealing with, if you're struggling with anything, or if you just want to take yourself to the next level, find the right people, build more of a community, start a mastermind group or something, because together you're going to be much more unstoppable than just by yourself.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. This has been a true testimony of breakthrough. This has been the Unstuck movement. All right.